Typically, when I bring a guest to the podcast, I already have a pretty good idea of what they do. I have to say that was not the case this time around. My guest on this episode is my former Golf Channel colleague, Justin Ray, who is now the head of content for 21st Group, a company that bills itself as a sports intelligence agency. This is from their website. Performance analytics enables us to drive sporting success for athletes, teams, leagues, and investors, and enable brands, broadcasters, and rights holders to tell unique stories to their fans. I am looking forward to hearing Justin tell me what that means.
I demand satisfaction.
My name is Whit Watson, and this is Media Credentials. I'm a sports announcer who's worked a lot of places. This podcast will peel back the layers of sports media and show you how the sausage gets made. Through interviews with industry pros and my own experience, you'll understand why you're seeing what you're seeing and who's responsible for it. Your media credentials have been approved. In sports media, content is king, and there have never been more avenues for us to deliver content. Radio, TV, streaming, print, blogs, podcasts, we are bombarding the consumer with information. But how do we know if any of it is working? That is where Justin Ray and 21st Group come in. They use the term sports intelligence to describe the process of gathering performance data and putting it to good use, turning information into success. Maybe you read the book or saw the movie Moneyball. In the early 2000s, the Oakland A's used what were, at the time, advanced analytics to decide how to construct their roster most efficiently. They figured out which statistical player measurements correlated most closely with actually winning baseball games. Think of Moneyball as the Hollywood version of what Justin does. And today, it's not just sports franchises who use these advanced analytics. It's entire leagues and corporate sponsors and broadcasters, cable networks, potential investors. Justin and 21st Group help those entities turn data into action and hopefully a desired outcome, whether that's winning more games, selling more tickets or sponsorships, or reaching a larger audience. Jay Ray, as we know him, is a former researcher at ESPN and Golf Channel, where he and I work together. In the golf world, he is a must-follow on Twitter. He's well known for his stat nuggets. And this conversation gets pretty deep in the weeds when it comes to crunching numbers, but I appreciated the chance to learn something new. Well, Justin, in my long history of podcasting, all 12 episodes, you're the first person with the title Head of Content. So this is a new territory for me. First of all, thank you for coming on. And secondly, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is give me your job description.
Yeah, so I'm kind of still getting used to the title itself, because it seems kind of, I don't want to call it hipsterish, but it's definitely new age in terms of where this industry is headed. But I'm the head of content for 21st Group. We're a sports intelligence agency with our headquarters based in London, but we're spread out all over the world. I've got colleagues in Singapore, in Tokyo, in Paris, in San Francisco, and then I'm just outside of Dallas now with my family. But so the roots of the company are in international soccer. I call it soccer when I'm on this side of the ocean. If I call it soccer in the London office, I'm justifiably chastised very severely. But
Understood.
But with global football, and I think about 2012, 2013 is when the company started working with some different front offices in that sport, and then around 2016, there were some mutual contacts between Ryder Cup Europe and our CEO, Blake, and some of the folks in our business. I wasn't there yet, obviously. I was with you at Golf Channel, but they basically said, hey, you guys have a solution here for us to kind of, with some strategy, for some team building. And that's kind of where the origin of the golf side of the company was born. Originally, it was called 21st Club, and that was the soccer side of it. Obviously, 20 teams in the Premier League. We'd be the 21st. And then the natural progression was the 15th club for the golf side, and that's what we were up until well after when I joined in 2019. But it kind of grew from there. I actually first met Blake, our CEO, and some of my future colleagues at that Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits. They were working with Darren Clark, the European captain, helping them with some strategy and stuff like that. They weren't successful that week, but 2 years later, they were very successful in Paris when the European team upset a pretty heavily favored U.S. team at Le Golf National. They were a big part of that. So that was the first real calling card there where, I kept in touch with Blake, our CEO, after meeting him and was following the company. There was mutual respect on both sides for what we could both do. And there was kind of a shared vision of what the next step in content creation and what the sports media landscape could look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I just felt like this opportunity where I could be really agile and move and do a whole bunch of different things and not just be, beholden to one company. We could have our hands working with manufacturers behind the scenes with some of their content, work with different broadcast companies, work with different, digital publications like The Athletic that I write for now. It was just I thought it was a really interesting business idea and a way to kind of do more than I was doing at Golf Channel. And I loved my time there, but this was a potential to kind of get out and get some different new opportunities and maybe work with some players, which I get to do now with the U.S. Solheim Cup team. And I don't know, it's a long winding description. I hope that was enough detail to kind of give you a good picture of what the company's beginnings are and what we are now.
Well, I read you at The Athletic. I enjoy reading your work. I want to go back to the phrase you used that's also on the mission statement, the front page, if you will, of the company's website, 21st Group, a sports intelligence agency. What does that mean? What is sports intelligence?
Yeah, we're not like MI6 or spies or anything. Don't worry.
No,
it's none of that. But basically any facet of a sports organization, whether it's an upstart soccer league in Japan or a developmental golf circuit in the United States, anything we can do to help a league or a player or an organization perform better is what we do. So, that stretches, like I mentioned, on the soccer side. In golf, we work with different manufacturers to help with, their content, streamline their technological solutions. We work with different governing bodies over the last 4 or 5 years pretty intensely to help them with their presentation online in terms of what their website looks like live in tournament. Anything you can think of, we kind of have our hands in. And we've expanded beyond soccer and golf now into all kinds of sports that aren't very big in the United States, but are really big around the world, like cricket, rugby. We were doing our first bit of work for the NFL internationally, which is pretty cool. So it's an exciting time to be part of this company. And we're only growing week in, week out. It's pretty cool time to be part of it.
And again, I'm going straight off the website. It says, quote, performance analytics enables us to drive sporting success for athletes, teams, leagues, and investors, and enable brands, broadcasters, and rights holders to tell unique stories to their fans. You mentioned the Ryder Cup and the European side. Are you supplying them with information that actually is helping them on the golf course? Are we talking about strictly a broadcast or marketing function?
No, so we're not this year for the Team Europe. They went another direction. But in the past, in 2016, 2018, and 2021, my colleagues were in the team rooms, helping the captain out with strategy, optimizing pairings, how the golf course could be set up to best utilize the talent on that team throughout the year, keeping an eye on players that might be under the radar that could be really beneficial fits with the players who we knew were going to be on the team to increase their probability of winning their matches. We've taken all that knowing now from our experience with Ryder Cup Europe, and now I'm working directly with Stacey Lewis and the U.S. Solheim Cup team this year, headed over to Spain. So we're not with the Ryder Cup this year. Hopefully we can help work with the U.S. team in the future. I've had a lot of fun getting to put the stars and stripes back on instead of rooting for the other side, feeling like a mercenary. But we've worked directly with their on-course strategy, with their team building, with their captain selections, and we've taken all that knowledge, all that experience, and we're using it to try to help Team USA get the win in Spain.
So it sounds like you're dealing in data. You're a data trafficker, essentially. How do you get it? I mean, how do you come up with the data that you use to inform the decisions and recommendations that you're making to whoever the client is?
Yeah, so it depends on what the job is. I mentioned we have a pretty broad scope, and I get to work with the information in a lot of different ways. if it's like we work with Sky Sports with their live commentary for golf 20 to 25 weeks a year. And so that is pretty cut and dry. That's the traditional information that I'd use from the PGA Tour's ShotLink databases, kind of the databases I've built over the years for myself that are unique, and using that information in real time with appropriate context and good delivery to tell the best stories possible. That's kind of the easy one to understand and gather. When you're talking about, like for the Solheim Cup this year, we're the engine behind the KPMG Performance Insights on the LPGA Tour. So our intelligence engine, as we like to call it, helps fuel the bespoke for the women's game strokes gain formula that they implement. And, we manage and help tell better stories through that data, based on what we gather and what we put on the KPMG Performance Insights website. So that's kind of how that system goes. It really just depends on how we foster and build these relationships with people like the PGA Tour, the LPGA, and in exchange for some of the content that I generate, we're able to use the information for all the other facets of our business. So it's an interesting way to look at content. It's both serves its initial purpose, which is to tell the best stories possible and to cover the sport, but at the same time, it's helping to forge strong relationships, and they get something they want, which is content from me and from my team in exchange for us being able to use the data to its best of its ability.
Are there any proprietary processes that are secret to you, or is this a situation where the information is available, you just have to know how to go find it?
It's pretty much all available publicly. I'm trying to think of anything that, we have some stuff that we've generated behind the scenes that is proprietary, but most of it is largely gatherable from public resources. But yeah, we do have some stuff that behind the scenes is just for us and things that we've developed on our own, products that we can generate. Like a lot of it's predictive in nature. Like for instance, a few years ago, we fueled the match win probability on the Golf Channel's, or not Golf Channel, excuse me. We fueled the match win probability on the Ryder Cup website, like live in real time. Mm-hmm. That's proprietary. Like that's something that we've, our own technology and resources and all that stuff has been generated on our own. But yeah, for the most part, the things that I deal with day in and day out, the stuff that I tweet out, it's largely publicly available.
So how did you get started? How does one get started in this particular aspect of the sports media business?
Yeah, it's been a meandering road. I wasn't always, I didn't grow up like a big time junior golfer. My dad's worked for the PGA of America for forever, since I was a little kid. So golf's always been part of my life, but him and my brother were way better players than I was. My dad played at OU, was a Texas state champion. My brother played junior college. I was way more into baseball growing up and basically all sports. I didn't really play a lot of golf, but I was the kid who kept his baseball Little League stats in his dad's Microsoft Excel.
No, you did not. Did you really?
I did. Yeah. I could tell you what my ERA was, and I had it based on like opponent and stuff like that. Wow. It's just easier to manage that way, Whit. Just
obviously.
So I don't know how many other 11-year-olds were doing that after they played the other 11-year-olds from around the way. But I was that kid. I was always more interested. The line I use is I was always more interested in the back of the baseball card than the front of it. It's just the way I've always been wired with the numbers, and sports have always been just ingrained in what I did every day, every facet of my life. I went to the University of Missouri thinking I was going to be Dan Patrick, anchoring SportsCenter. Quickly found out there were about 500 other dudes who thought the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And I did a lot of, at the School of Journalism at Mizzou, I did a lot of hard news. I didn't even really do sports. I was doing stuff for the NPR station and, writing like beat reports for the Columbia Missourian, the newspaper there. I didn't do a whole lot of sports, but I was still an absolute sports nut. And I had applied for the ESPN research position internship while I was still there. I was fortunate enough to get that. It was a really detailed, long process, which seems kind of crazy now that I look back on it. I was told there was, I think, 12,000 applicants and 2 interns got the job, and I was one of them. So wow. It felt like a magic ticket for, it was like the Willy Wonka ticket for me. I was so fired up. And when I got to the internship, I was determined, I was like, they're not going to let me go. This is my goal. I'm not here to, party, or this isn't the end of the road for me, right? I went there with the objective that you're not going to be able to, you're going to hire me. I'm going to come back full time when I've got my degree. And I did. And I started at ESPN in 2008. I was in the research department. I worked on all sports. I did Sports Center, ESPN News, a lot of shifts that lasted until 2:30 or 3 in the morning, waiting for West Coast baseball or basketball to finish.
Oh yeah, been there, done that.
I'm sure you're familiar with that ESPN News studio.
Yep.
So I was. But the other thing I noticed when I was, when I was 23, 24 years old, they didn't have a lot of specialization in golf, and it would always kind of bother me because I love the sport, and Tiger was everything then, and so I was really kind of perturbed by the fact that there wasn't a lot of really great, reliable information about golf. So I started kind of carving my niche in the sport, in golf. I was asked to start writing a column for ESPN.com that was kind of statistical based when I was like 25, which is crazy to me that I was given that opportunity. But I took advantage of it. I did that for a few years, and I got to start working at the major championships, which was unbelievable because I built that reputation as being, the golf specialist in the research department. While I was on the Scott Van Pelt show. I was working on the TV side of his radio show. So being able to build that relationship certainly helped too with Scott's involvement in the golf coverage. So, he built trust in me, and I was able to work with him on the road pretty good amount at those major championships up until I was given the chance in 2011. They launched a little upstart that seemed like a really good idea at the time called Longhorn Network. And me being from Texas, they asked me, would you like to make more money and leave Connecticut and move to Austin? I said yes, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to be part of that documentary someday about how that network went. But I was still able simultaneously to work in golf while doing the stuff for UT because there's no real college sports in the summer in the heart of the golf season. So in 2014, after I'd started to build a pretty decent following on Twitter with my account there that was basically stats in real time and stuff, Golf Channel called me and kind of sort of recruited me a little bit. I don't know if I want to call it that, but I was given the opportunity to come join their network. And I kind of knew at that time that golf is where I really wanted to make my mark. And that's where I wanted to, be part of full time. Joined Golf Channel in 2014. It was a great decision. Got to work on Golf Central. I was a lead researcher for that. Got to go to all the major championships, all the road shows for Golf Central. Spent a lot of time on the road. Made some great friends, unbelievable relationships. Got a lot of good experience there. And then in 2019, I mentioned earlier, I did that initial connection with Blake and with the 21st Group crew. I joined up with them after some negotiations, and here I am now.
The social media piece of this is a big deal for you, as you mentioned, because anybody who's a part of golf Twitter knows Justin Ray. Everybody follows J Ray, and you're going to get the nugget that nobody else is going to give you. That really played a large role in your career development, don't you think?
It played a massive role. I wouldn't be where I am today without the Twitter account, without being able to utilize it to the best of its ability. I thought, and when I first saw what Twitter was, and this is 15 years ago now, I thought, man, this is a perfect vehicle for sports. Like, this is for pieces of information live during a game, a tournament, whatever it might be. Okay, it's in real time. It's 140 characters, whatever. It's something very short. It's descriptive. It's pithy. This is a perfect vehicle for this. And I just kind of saw that and built it from there and did a lot of what I was doing work-wise in terms of helping out the shows I was on and the live tournaments I was working with, just kind of integrated that into a Twitter feed and, trying to refine it over the years and make it a part of, enhancing the viewing experience for a golf fan. So thank you for the kind words about that. I know it's been many years now where, most of the industry, if not everybody, follows along. And I'm very appreciative of that because it's been a significant positive factor in my career.
Well, it's funny what hits, because I started posting photographs of the cards that I make up for tournaments, and suddenly that became a thing.
Yeah.
You never know what people are going to attract themselves to. So, as I don't want to date this, but it is July 7th, as we record this. What do you think about what's happening with Twitter now? Is sports Twitter as we know it going to die?
I don't know. I don't think the community around it will die. I think it would just gravitate to another medium. I don't know if that is Threads or if that is Instagram, or they're all the different social media platforms. They're the same and they're very different simultaneously, right? Like Instagram is obviously much more visual, and it's not a lot of sharing of information. Where Twitter, there are some of the elements of Instagram, but it's largely more useful in like a dissemination of information vehicle. I don't know what's going to happen to it. I mean, the tinkering going on since the takeover by Elon Musk, I don't know all the details of it, but there are obviously things that are changing, and I don't know if those are going to be permanent. I don't know if that'll be long, the end game for it. I don't know if people will just quit it altogether. I'm not ready to bail on it completely, but I'm also open-minded to know that everything has a shelf life, and if people are going to gravitate to another medium of whether it's social media or some other way to gather their information, then if you want to stay on top of the sport you're covering, you need to be ahead of the game and ahead of the curve, and make the right move and not be a follower in that sense. A pun not intended.
Going back to sports intelligence and actionable insights, again, coming off of the 21st Group mission statement on the website, were you a fan of the Moneyball era in baseball, the book, the movie, Billy Beane, the Bill James experience? Was that something that ever informed your decision about entering this side of the business?
Yeah, there's an element of it. And I always think I get asked that a lot because it's the most relevant cultural flashpoint, right, to what I do day in and day out. I was always fascinated with that way of breaking down baseball with a baseball background that I have. But I think in my eyes, you can have all the information and data in the world, and it can be the best data available. But if you don't deliver it in the right way at the right time to the right person, that the data is just not actionable. It doesn't mean anything. So you've got to give it that proper context. So I think that, yeah, I was a fan of it because it was a new way to look at things, and it was a way to garner an advantage competitively over your opponents. But from a storytelling perspective, I always found that it's been a kind of a difficult road initially because people are initially going to reject what they don't understand. So I remember at the Masters in 2011, I tried to get strokes gained putting on a graphic on SportsCenter, and you would have thought it was the most blasphemous thing I'd ever proposed, like possible. It was like laughed at, told me it was nonsense. And of course, a few years later, it's a ubiquitous statistic, but people just weren't familiar with it yet. And I think that, that road in terms of storytelling with this information, once you're able to apply proper context and people get, they're able to extract better meaning from it, that's what's really important, and not just the data itself.
It's funny that you use the word storytelling. Having been at Golf Channel and NBC for a long time, I talk to a lot of people that work on the Olympic broadcasts, and every 2 years, that's the number one phrase you hear in the building is storytelling. That's so important. But their version of storytelling is more of a background to the athlete. Yeah. And your version of storytelling is data driven. I think that's a really interesting comparison. Like, when you say storytelling, what do you mean by that?
I mean, telling you specifically why a player is winning a golf tournament or why a player is struggling in this particular round, and contextualizing what Scotty Scheffler is doing tee to green this season. That is the best strokes gained tee to green average for a season since prime Tiger Woods. Like, I want to give you the specific details analytically, statistically, to tell you why this is happening. What Scotty's dog's name is, I don't really care, right? That's not the storytelling I'm interested in. I'm interested in the game itself, what I'm watching. That's what's always fascinated me, whether it's football, basketball, golf, baseball, soccer. It doesn't matter what the sport is. I want to know, why is this pitcher really effective against left-handed hitters? I want to know why the Seattle secondary is the best at preventing deep passes in the NFL. I want whatever it is. I want to know the specific data behind it. Why? I've always had that desire and hunger for it, and I know there's a market for it. There's other people like me, and that's my version of storytelling. I want to tell you specifically, why a player is succeeding or failing, or why this golf course is yielding a specific type of result. That's I mean, that's journalism to me. That's storytelling to me. It's telling you the details behind why something's happening.
And on the golf side, correct me if I'm wrong, was that not the impetus behind the concept of strokes gained? The idea was to explain why a player was winning based on how he was performing, not compared to the universe, but compared to the other players in the field. Am I close on that?
You're right on. You're spot on, Whit. I mean, we went through so many generations where the only numbers we knew were this on the scorecard, were circles and squares, red and black, over par, and you couldn't say like, okay, we know watching Jack Nicklaus drive a golf ball is really impressive, and it seems like he makes a lot of clutch putts, but I couldn't tell you like. I wish I knew what like Ben Hogan's strokes gained approach was relative to his peers. I'm sure it was absolutely incredible, but we don't know that. And yes, that was the impetus behind, the strokes gained concept, and what Mark Brody created originally was telling you, okay, not all fours are created equal, right? Like you can drive a green and 3-putt, or you can, hit a short drive, hit your approach in the bunker, hit your bunker shot to a foot and tap it in. It's the same score, but the story for the hole is completely different for those two players. So
right.
We want to be able to quantify the abilities of specific players. And I think back on the real whale there is, man, if we could just know what the strokes gained specific numbers were for Tiger in his 2000 season, like the stories we could tell there and the comparisons we could make, unfortunately, it just came around a little bit too late for that to happen.
Now, why is that? Because the data wasn't collected?
No, it just didn't. Yeah, it didn't exist yet. The concept wasn't invented, and the data wasn't collected. So you can do one thing you can do is strokes gained total, which is the most brilliant thing to me about the concept of strokes gained is that the individual pieces, strokes gained off the tee, approach, around the green, and putting, give you the number strokes gained total, and that number will always equal what a player's score was in terms of differential versus the field average. So that part of the formula where it comes full circle allows you to look at, like I can tell you that I think the 3 best averages in strokes gained total for career in Masters history are Ben Hogan, Tiger Woods, and Jordan Spieth. We can tell you that with strokes gained total. We just don't have the breakdown in specific piece by piece, like how great Jack was strokes gained off the tee or Seve strokes gained around the green. It'd be really cool to know that, but unfortunately we don't have that data.
As far as the 21st group is concerned in general, you mentioned other sports like cricket, like rugby. I believe I saw some connection to auto racing as well. What are some aspects of sports intelligence that you've learned on the non-golf side during your time with 21st group?
The thing that's been most eye-opening to me are the things we do on the business side, helping with front office decisions for different global soccer clubs, upstart leagues. There's a real, a business and financial aspect side to it that I had absolutely no experience in previously. I was, my background that I described is in TV production and storytelling. So I haven't had my hands in that specifically, and I shouldn't because it's not my background. But that's been the most eye-opening thing to me is, the reliance that these massive, massive clubs will have on our head coaching search, or how much money they should devote to scouting in a certain country, or, just everything that goes into running a professional sports organization. Our company's been asked to do in terms of, you name it, we've been part of it in soccer and in rugby and sports around the world.
I go back to the days where you had a spotter next to you at a football game who was pointing out which player made the tackle and which player just caught the pass. And now this is a completely different planet. What's next? What's the next great leap from your side of things?
The leap that I've made this year has been to working with the Solheim Cup team and actually having my hands on in tournament performance data. I'm so excited to get to Spain and be part of that. I haven't been part of a team since high school baseball, so I'm fired up for that. That's probably the next step that the first easy step that's been defined out that I'll take. But yeah, it's a good question. I think that continuing to push the envelope in terms of the detail in which we're able to tell stories with golf statistics. I know the next generation of ShotLink statistics are going to be really exciting. I've always wanted to know who's the best downhill putter on the PGA Tour. What percentage of the players putts in a given round were uphill as opposed to downhill. Things like that we've never really quantified before. I think you see it in other sports. I mean, we know so much more about. You watch a baseball game, there's just so many more numbers now and pieces of information that we never had access to before. And I feel like the other sports have always kind of followed baseball because it was, I don't know if the sport itself lends to more numbers and downtime in terms of like between pitches and at bats. And I feel like there's a lot of corollaries to golf in that sense, where you've got a lot of time in between action to tell stories with data. And I think that opens up kind of a window to continue to get more detailed and more specific. And that's what I think is probably the next evolution of it. With more and more technology, more data gathering, with the processes becoming more sophisticated, the bigger you build that volume of information, the better stories you're able to tell in real time.
Yeah, baseball's always had an infatuation with stats, really, more than most other major sports. Are there other sports that you've seen in your experience that are developing that sort of infatuation with numbers, where in the past the statistics or the deep level statistics weren't that prevalent? And I'm thinking here of, for example, when I watch Major League Soccer now, there are more stats being presented to me than there ever were in watching a soccer game, a football match.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there are other entities out there that you see that are adopting this approach a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the biggest leaders in this in recent years, I think, has been the NFL in terms of, for one of the most important thing in football that's not quantified with statistics is offensive line play, right? We don't have a great way of quantifying how good an offensive line is, other than the analyst saying that they're good, or a guy getting a pancake block.
Block, right?
Yeah, that's about it. Like, there's no real quantifiable way to measure what's an incredibly important part of that sport. And I think like ESPN released, I think it was a couple years ago, a pass and run block win rate, which is a really cool way to try to evaluate it. I know it's not perfect, but none of these statistics are in their infancy. I think the NFL's starting to do a better job of implementing some of these things with some of their next gen data and stuff like that. I think what's important though is you're able to contextualize this stuff, because you don't put a number up on the screen with a funky logo and say, oh, that looks cool. Like, I don't get anything out of that. What I want to know is like, okay, let's say on the golf broadcast, sometimes they'll show a tee shot and they'll have something like smash factor and apex height and all that. I don't know what any of that means. I need that to be quantified into something that makes more sense. So there's a balancing act there in terms of taking the next step and evolving. And this is a meandering, again, answer to your question, but taking the next step and telling and getting better data, but also contextualizing it in a way that tells a better story.
Are you easy to watch a game with, or is it hard to watch next to you because you just know too much about what's going on?
I think I'm easy to watch a game with. I'm not the guy. I mean, I think the thing that I've been worse at working in TV for so many years is if I'm like watching the local news and there's a typo on a font on the screen.
Oh, I'm brutal.
My wife is like, oh my God, just lay on, just forget it, dude. Like, come on, you're not in the control room right now. And I think now that I'm a few years removed from being in the control room all the time, I'm a little bit better about that. If I'm watching a ball game or a tournament or something with my dad, I can't tell if he's really into the things I'm saying or if he's just like, oh my God, I've heard enough, So maybe my dad or my brother or my wife or somebody is better to ask that. But yeah, I'm definitely worse when it comes to typos and jump cuts and things of that nature in a TV broadcast.
What was your take when the announcement was made that the PGA Tour was going into business with the Public Investment Fund?
I, like everybody, was completely shocked because of just the rhetoric and the news cycle that preceded it. Very surprised at how sudden it was, how, in this sport, it seems like before every big thing happens, you kind of hear about it quietly a few weeks beforehand, right? And that just wasn't the case. I mean, whether that's players defecting from LIV or defecting to LIV or smaller pieces of news, you feel like you get a little bit of a heads up, especially being in the media, with some murmurs and stuff, but there was nothing. And I mean, the reaction, it was universal and honest. It's just absolute surprise from the biggest players in the world to everyone I know in the media landscape. Look, I think anybody who says they know exactly what it's going to look like, they're lying to themselves. I don't know what this is going to constitute. I don't know what the future of both tours are. And I think that anybody who thinks they know what's going to happen is largely conjecture at this point. So surprise and still kind of in wait and see mode, really, to see what comes next.
And on a similar line, we've got this shared experience at ESPN. Mine was a lot longer ago than yours was. And they had some seismic news in the past couple of weeks, as well as they got rid of a lot of talent, a lot of announcers that were making a lot of money as they try to cut down their costs. And kind of an overall picture from you, I'm curious from your perspective and what you do. It seems like the way that we are watching sports on TV is cratering a little bit. The regional sports network model seems to not be working. There are a number of different companies that are getting out of that business entirely. How do you think we are going to end up delivering live sports content to a wide audience 2 years from now, 5 years from now?
It was a difficult day at ESPN. They've had a bunch of those. I got a buddy, one of my best friends is a producer on SportsCenter, and I just texted him, time for my every 6 months thinking of you guys up there text, because it seems like it's happened repeatedly over the last several years, and that's kind of the nature of the business. I think especially post-COVID, when a lot of people realized during the pandemic that, we don't have to send all these people to all these places. They can do things remotely, and now you see college basketball games being called with the announcers not even there, or
they're in their living rooms. They get and a lot of folks never knew that, Justin. They were getting monitors and a lighting kit and a camera shipped to their homes and calling it off a television monitor. Basketball games we're talking about.
Yeah. And that's, look, if a bean counter, for lack of a better term, someone in power who's in charge of money sees, well, if 80% of our fans don't know the difference and it saves us X amount of money, then that's the way it's going to be from now on. So
that's right.
It's a little bit depressing, but it's the reality of it, right? If a business finds a way to trim some kind of cost and they don't see a significant enough deterioration in the product to not justify it, then it's going to happen. It's the way it is. So I think looking 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I think we have an even bigger concern because kids don't care as much about sports anymore. I think that's a real issue and a real problem. I think you can look at most of even on college campuses and looking at the stands for a lot of football games this upcoming season. If you get away from the biggest schools, I think you'll be able to look around and, the crowds are a little bit smaller. And I think that's a problem that's going to grow going into the future. And I'm not a behavioral psychologist or a sociologist or anything, but it doesn't feel like there's more stuff for young people to occupy their time and their minds. And, there's a window of attentiveness issue. And I think that's a problem to look at, in terms of sports media and sports broadcasting business going forward as well. But yeah, for what you said for the next couple of years, I hope that there isn't a continuing deterioration of, resources put into making broadcast better. But at the same time, anything that can be done more efficiently in a business, it's going to happen. It's what's going to be the decision that's made.
So the last thing before I let you go, you had a chance. You were on the media schedule at a golf tournament, giving a press conference, not asking questions at a press conference, but actually giving a press conference, something that I have never done. Explain to me what happened.
Well, there were at least 6 or 7 people on hand, Whit, for what I had to say that was very important. But no, I got to help roll out the KPMG Performance Insights website, which is a project I've been working on the last 2 or 3 years with the LPGA, KPMG, and then our crew, 21st Group, to help bring strokes gain data to the women's game that had never been before available. And so it's been probably the most rewarding thing I've ever been a part of in my career, to be able to genuinely do something in women's golf that had never been available before, to help these players learn more about their own games, to know that, players, the reactions we had have been incredible, where they're like, I didn't know that, I really needed to work on my shots around the green. I actually thought that I'd improved in that stat this year, when really I learned that I'm losing half a stroke compared to last season. Or I didn't know that, my wedge proximity has gotten way worse this year than last season, or whatever it might be. These players are just able to learn more about what they do and what their games are, and they're able to apply it to their practice and help them become better. And honestly, when I was at Golf Channel, I didn't work a ton in women's golf. We might have a segment or two on Golf Central every week or two, but it wasn't anything. It was more focused on the men's game, and I didn't really have the opportunity to really get into this sport. The more I learn about these players and the numbers behind it, it just gets more and more interesting and fascinating week in and week out. And I really hope that there are golf fans out there who really can give this a chance, and maybe this is a vehicle for them to get more fired up about it, whether it's using it to bet on them or just genuine interest in the sport. The more you learn about these players and what they're really good at, and the different traits of their game, that's the stuff about athletes that really is fascinating to me, is their on course or on court or field performance. And this opens up brand new avenues for that for the women's game. So it's just something I've been really fired up to be part of, and it's cool to see this kind of come to fruition in recent weeks with the website launch.
One aspect that we haven't talked about yet that has become pervasive in all of sports, not just golf, is the gambling aspect. And I would imagine with the access that you have to the data, that has to be a game changer in some way, shape, or form for your business.
It is, yeah. It makes it all the more important. I will give a personal anecdote. I bought my wife's engagement ring with the money I won on DraftKings from the 2015 Wyndham Championship. So I'd like to thank Ryan Moore and Bill Haas for their performances that week, because they helped facilitate one of the more important purchases of my life. So a romantic story to tell the grandkids someday.
Yeah, does she know that, by the way?
She does, yeah, because okay. I've told everyone within earshot about it, because I'm still proud of my performance that week. But yeah, no, what it does is it makes the information more relevant to more people. And look, you may disagree with maybe you don't like that gambling is taking a bigger presence in some sports, but it's driving more revenue, it's bringing more eyeballs to it, it's bringing more interest to it. And I think that in a lot of cases, especially with a sport like golf, you might have a sports fan, a general sports fan who maybe watches the majors but not much else, who gets a little bit more engaged via maybe daily fantasy or legalized gambling, and then that opens them up to being they fall in love with the sport more, and they're more involved in it. They want to go play more, and they're watching every week now, and that's kind of the experience I've had with a lot of my friends my age who, in college or high school would have never thought of watching professional golf. And now that they're older and they've gotten a taste of it and they love it, it's kind of opened their eyes to it. So that's the way I see it, is that it makes the information much more valuable, first of all. But I also think it can be, gateway is not the right word, because it seems to be a negative connotation, but it can be a way to lead people into, being more engaged in and really loving the sport.
In just a few seconds, we'll have some closing thoughts on this episode, so stay tuned. If you're enjoying it so far, please consider subscribing or sharing and leave a review. Let me know what you'd like to hear in the future on Media Credentials. Justin's work is a great example of how specialized our industry has become. It's hard to imagine a job like his existing even 5 years ago. It's also amazing to me to learn what can be done with data. Baseball may have gotten there first, but just about every other sport has caught up. And now we're into the realm of artificial intelligence, AI, using machines that can mimic the human mind's ability to solve problems and make decisions. We are clearly just scratching the surface when it comes to sports intelligence, a lesser-known aspect of sports media, but one that will have enormous impact on how content is created and delivered. Thanks again for listening to Media Credentials. For examples of my work, including video and audio clips, a blog, and my contact page, check out whitwatson.com.